I want you to get out your Bibles if you've got them. If you don't have, get one from the pew in front of you. I have been asked by more than one of you to do a series on Christian evidences. And so we're going to begin that tonight. And was it last weekend or the weekend before? Walnut Grove. Last weekend? I think it's last weekend. Brother Jeff Miller was at Walnut Grove, and he done a seminar on creation and evolution, and myself, along with some others, went to part of it, and then listened to a lot of it online. I am not going to profess to have anything near the knowledge that he has, but I think by looking at some material that he looked at, I did purchase 3 or 4 of his books, and I've been reading those and trying to prepare a little bit for this. And as I was thinking about how to put all this together so that I could present it to you to where hopefully I could present it in a way that you can understand it and not just be confused myself and then confuse you more, I thought we're better to start than the very beginning. And so what I want us to do tonight in order to lay the foundation for our study is we're going to look at Genesis chapter 1. And then from here on out, we are going to look at archaeological evidence, scientific evidence, geological evidence that only adds more weight and more proof to the text that we read here in Genesis chapter 1 as how we came about to be. And, you know, I was reading something here a while back, and it was a man talking about with an atheist. And the atheist was, in a way, making fun of the believer in creation. And the fellow that believed in creation said, well, he said, you know, in the beginning, I believe God. Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning, God. But he said, you, in the beginning, believe dirt. And that's really, if you are an evolutionist, then that's really what you have to believe in. And evolution is a belief just like believing in creation is a belief. And so don't let them scare you. Don't let books scare you when they talk about evolution being fact. Because when you really get down and start studying, and you look at the archaeological evidence, and you look at the geological evidence, and the mathematical evidence that's there, I have no doubt in my mind that creation is the way that the world came about. And there are questions that are raised by those who believe in evolution that sometimes might scare us a little bit because we may not have an answer right off. But I hope by the time we get through with this series, I hope that I give you enough ammunition that if someone confronts you with something, and let me give you an example, and I'm not going to answer this question tonight, but we will answer it down the road. When the flood came, there were thousands and thousands of people on this earth. All the animals that died, and many of those are fossilized. What about the remains of all of those thousands of people that died in the flood? What happened to their remains? Why are they not in the fossil record? Now see, that would be a question that would kind of throw you off guard if you don't have the answer. And if you want the answer before we get to that, when we talk about the flood, you see me and I'll give you that information. But we are going to look at that down the road, and to help you to understand and to have the ability to answer those questions so that it doesn't weaken your faith. Because if you take something like that and you're, confronted with that, and our young folks are confronted with that, then, well, wait a minute, maybe the Bible's not true. Maybe evolution is true. Maybe the flood really didn't happen. I believe the flood happened. I am convinced that the flood actually happened. I believe that the Grand Canyon is a product of the flood. And we'll look at some of that as we go through. But I want us to start today at the beginning. And I want us to look at each day of creation and what God did for our basis. And I know you're familiar with this just like I am, but sometimes, like Paul told Timothy, you remind them. And we need reminding from time to time. Day 1, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God hovered over the water, over the face of the waters. And then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. So the evening and morning were the first day. I don't know what space looked like before God created it. I have no way to go back in time and to see what was here. And it's difficult for me to imagine something where there's nothing. You know what I mean? For there to be nothing, I can't comprehend that. But God in the beginning spoke this into existence. And as we look at the creation, God done this in 6 days. Could He have not just as easily have said, "Let the earth and the universe be complete," and done it in 1 day? Absolutely. But He chose to do it in 6 days. And then people might say, well, where did God come from? And I think that's a valid question. But at the same time, we know that God is eternal in both directions. And remember, if God was affected by time, by space, and by matter, He would not be God. God is not affected by time. And God is not affected by space. God is not affected by matter. God is everywhere. And God is eternal. And God is all-knowing. And so God has always been and always will be. Now, as He spoke the heavens and earth into existence, then He continues His creation after the first day. Now remember, He created the heavens and the earth. And the water would have been here because, remember, look in verse 1, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And as we go through, we'll get a little bit more in depth in these things as we go through. But then, beginning on day 2, then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and morning were the second day. Now, I want you to think about a couple things here. There are those who have the theory that the days in Genesis are not 24-hour periods of time. They think the days in Genesis were eons of years, millions of years, allowing the earth to prepare itself, and that's how God used creation to bring about the earth to where we could live on it. I don't believe that's the case. I believe if you look at all of these things, I believe that God created the earth with a history. For example, we'll talk about a little bit later, but if you'd walked up to Adam 5 minutes after he had been created, how old would you think he was? With our experience, Adam was created a full-grown man. And he might have looked like he was 25 years old when God created him. And if you walked up to Adam and said, Adam, you're 25 years old. Adam said, nope, 5 minutes. God just created me. And I think the earth is the same way. And there is geological evidence, and especially there's some in the Grand Canyon that you can go and look at and will tell you that you can see things that have happened that are different. In some cases, there are layers, and then beneath that place where there's layers, there are sections where it's just like one big lump of rock. Now, they will tell you that the Grand Canyon was formed by the Colorado River, eroding out over millions of years, the Grand Canyon. I have a difficult time believing that. Let me give you a reason why. And this is a David reason. The Mississippi River is a lot bigger than the Colorado River. A lot more water flows down the Mississippi River than does the Colorado River. The soil, the earth that the Mississippi River flows through is a lot softer than those rocks in Colorado, in the Grand Canyon. Would it not make a lot more sense for the Mississippi River to erode a canyon a mile deep in softer earth than it would the Colorado River eroding solid rock and granite away? To me, there's a spot out in Tim's Field where our creek, the creek that comes down, it makes a bend. Over the last 4 or 5 years, it has eroded out a spot probably 20 foot deep into the bank. But do I think the earth, do I think that took millions of years? Absolutely not. In the same way with these two rivers. I think the Grand Canyon is a product of the flood. And as we get into that, we're going to look at that, and I hope to give you enough evidence that you believe the same thing. Now, God has devised, on the second day, He created the firmament, and some suggest that there were the waters on the earth and then there was water above the earth, which very well may have been the case. And as we'll get over into it, some of that water may have been used in the flood. But there are some other evidences that you and I are going to look at as we get through that we'll see that was not, maybe perhaps that's not where all the water came from for the flood. But remember, on the second day, God creates the water and separates the water from that's on the earth, the water that's above the earth. Then on day 3, then God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of waters He called seas. And God said that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, and herb yielding seed, and fruit trees that yield fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herbs that yielded seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and morning were the third day. He causes the dry land to appear, and now plants are growing on the earth. And I want you to think about something right here. The trees that are bearing fruit, what kind of fruit are they bearing? Whatever kind of tree it is, that's what kind of fruit it's bearing. Have you ever seen an apple tree bear a peach? Have you ever seen a peach tree bear an apple? Or better yet, have you ever seen an apple tree bear a pecan? Have you ever seen it? I haven't. And so what does that tell us? That what God's saying, whatever kind of fruit it is, or whatever kind, that's what it's going to bear. Now, what does that mean for me and about evolution? What does evolution say? You remember we mentioned a while ago the evolutionists believed in the beginning dirt? In reality, they were saying in the beginning there was one little cell. And from that one little cell there was the explosion. And then from that one cell, all life sprang forth. Through that explosion, everything that's here exists because of that. Now, have you ever seen an explosion create anything other than a mess? Anytime there's an explosion, it doesn't put things together. It tears things apart. And so to think about that all life comes from one cell, and the variety of life that exists on this planet. Now I want you to think about that. The variety of life. You know, I've heard Vicki say we'd be watching National Geographics or, showing all the animals and all the colors of the birds and the monkeys that have the colored faces, that all the different colors in their faces, and looking at all the different animals, and to think, all of that just happened. To me, it makes no sense at all. But here, God created everything, and then now is allowing on day 3 the earth to prepare itself to begin to inhabit the animals and mankind. And then on day 4, then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years, and to let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it was so. Then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw it was good. And the evening and morning were the 4th day. God creates the celestial bodies, the stars, the sun, the moon, and gives them a purpose. And, you think about it today, our year is based on the earth rotating or orbiting the sun. Our day is based on the rotation of the earth, one rotation. What is our week based on? What is our week based on? Think about it. Creation. I believe it's creation. Because you go back to, or go forward to Exodus chapter 20. And remember in Exodus chapter 20, when God is giving Moses the 10 Commandments, and when He says, "You shall rest on the 6th day, because in 6 days, or on the 7th day, for in 6 days I created the heavens and the earth." He gave them instructions. You work for 6 days, and they knew what a day was. It was a 24-hour period. And again, this is more evidence of the 24-hour day. So we are given the signs and the reasons and the ability to know our seasons and our times and our days and our years. Then on day 5, then God said, "Let the waters abound with abundance of living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of heaven." So God created sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let the birds multiply on the earth." So the evening and morning were the 5th day. Now God has begun to create animal life. The birds and the fish of the sea, and all the things that are creating after their own kind. Again, remember, none of these are producing life of a different kind. You don't have a bird giving life to a dog. You don't have a dog giving life to a pig. Evolutionists would have you to believe that dinosaurs evolved into birds. There is that thinking that's where dinosaurs went. I know they talk about some being extinct, but there is that some dinosaurs evolved into birds. Again, it doesn't make sense. You remember a few weeks ago when we talked about the woodpecker and his tongue and how he is designed to be able to peck as hard as he does on that wood and it not jar his brain out. You know, you bang your head against the wall that many times, you're not going to be able to walk. But that woodpecker can do that over and over and over. And then that tongue that can be up to 10 inches long. How would something like that evolve? What would he do between the millions of years that it takes him, according to evolutionists, it takes him to evolve, to develop into that? How would he survive long enough to reproduce to be able to accomplish that? If you really sit down and critically think about evolution, it don't work. Let me give you another quick example. Adaptation. So you adapt to your surroundings. Let me drop you off in the Arctic Circle with nothing but the shirt on your back. And let's see if you can adapt to that climate. Not going to be able to do it, are you? Let's come a little closer to home. Let me take you and throw you out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and see how long you last, how long it takes you to develop gills so that you can be a fish. You know, and that's what evolution is telling us. You adapt to your surroundings. You evolve to fit your surroundings. And that one species can give life to another. Better yet, they say life can come from nothing. God says it can't happen. And life gives life to life after its own kind, according to God. And God has created these animals on the 5th day, the birds and the sea creatures, and they create after their own kind. Then on day 6, then God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to its kind." Again, there's that guideline, according to its kind. Cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, each according to its own kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So here now God has created the land creatures. the animals and the cows and all the beasts that God created on the earth, which, by the way, includes dinosaurs. Because if you go to Genesis or Exodus chapter 20, again, where God was giving the Ten Commandments, that God said, in 6 days I finished the creation. That word finished there in the Greek means complete, no more added to it. I read something the other day. There is a theory that God, after the first week of creation, after the seventh day, that God created more following the seventh day. Folks, that's not Bible. They say that, well, God, there were others that may have been other human beings that were created after Adam and Eve that we're just not told about. We're told in Genesis chapter 3 that Eve is the mother of all living. God says Adam and Eve are it. That's the extent of His creation of mankind. Then they had children and offspring, and they gave birth to other children. And so let's continue to read. Then God said, "Let us create man in our image, according to our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him. Male and female created He them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and everything that creeps on the earth, it was there in which there is life. I have given every green herb for food." And it was so. Then God saw the evening, that everything that He had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So God concludes His creation here. And I want to jump over into Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 for just a minute, where God recounts His creation of mankind, where God gathered the dust of the earth and created man from that dust. Have you noticed that everything else that God created, He spoke into existence? He spoke it into existence. The sea creatures, the land creatures, the birds that fill the air. But with man, He gathered dust, and from the dust of the ground, God created man. And God breathed into the nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. God gave mankind a soul. Mankind is special to God. God had created everything else for the first 6 days in preparation for mankind. And folks, for us to stand back and say, well, maybe God didn't do it the way He said, to me is foolishness. We need to trust God for what He said. I was thinking this morning and kind of thinking about some lessons down the road. In Mark 16:16, Jesus said, "He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved." That's pretty simple, isn't it? It's pretty simple. Now, the rest of that verse says, "But that he that doth not believe will be condemned." Mankind has gone to so much trouble to steer around baptism when Jesus very simply said, "He that believes and is baptized shall be saved." Why do we go to so much trouble to be contrary to what Jesus said, to what God said? How many billions of dollars have been spent on evolution and the teaching of evolution, when very simply we can read God's Word and say, this is how it came about. This is why we're here. This is where we came from. But we don't want to accept it. And folks, you and I, from childhood, have been indoctrined with evolution. Since childhood. The cartoons that you watched when you were kids, the cartoons that I watched when I was a kid, you saw cavemen, and when you heard something about the prehistoric dinosaurs, what were you told? Millions of years ago, over and over and over and over through life. When you got into school, when you studied biology, when you studied geology, when you studied all the things you studied in school, what were you told? The earth is a young earth. That's not what you were told. You were told it was billions of years old. And that dinosaurs and man did not coexist. Folks, can I tell you there was dinosaurs on the ark? I'm convinced of it. And we read about Job, and we read about the behemoth and Leviathan. And some of the side notes in your Bible may call, a hippopotamus or an alligator. Folks, you read the description of those two creatures that are described by Job. They're not a hippopotamus. A hippopotamus doesn't have a tree or a tail like a cedar tree. A little bitty, dinky thing. Now, what I've tried to do tonight is lay us some groundwork and a foundation. And then we're going to begin over the course of the next few weeks to look at some geological evidence, some archaeological evidence, as well as some mathematical evidence that the earth is not billions of years old, but that it is a relatively young earth and that it was created by God. If you have any specific questions you want me to try to address, let me know what they are, and I'll do my very best to do that. And then we're even going to talk about the flood. There is a book that is written by Brother Jeff Miller that I bought one of the other day. It's called Flooded, talking about the flood. And when we get through with this, if you would like to read it, I'd be glad to let you read it. Or you can go online and purchase you one if you want to, but I'll be glad to let you use mine when I get through getting ready for this lesson. But you can't have till I get done. So, but I'll be glad to let you look at that. He is a very intelligent man. He has a doctor's degree, and I forget what it's in, some type of engineering, and but he goes into great detail that I'm not going to be going into. But I'm going to get you the information that I think that we can help us to better have confidence where we came from and that who created us. Tonight, if you're here and you're not a Christian and you have that desire to become a child of God, we can assist you with that. If you have questions about your relationship with God, if you're a Christian or not, and you need the prayers of your brothers and sisters in Christ, we will pray with you and pray for you. If you have a need, I encourage you to come while we stand and while